Welcome, everybody. Happy Thursday. Let's get this thing going. Johnny Mitchell, am here to tell you that I'm a damn fool. I thought I knew how geopolitics worked. I thought I had a good grasp on American history and how imperialism mixed with corporatism drove foreign policy, specifically American foreign policy, right? I grew up in the Iraq War days. I was in high school when we invaded, and all you heard about in protests was blood for oil, blood for oil. Now, of course, that was true. We all assumed that invading Iraq, which had nothing to do with 9/11, and we knew that within the first months of being over there, by the way. And then it became, they have weapons of mass destruction. We very quickly knew that wasn't the case either. And then everybody just kind of said, all right, well, we're just at war. So I knew that back then. But in my mind, I really thought what's going on in Gaza is a religious war. It's a war of ideologies. It's a war between Zionism, which is a fundamentalist and imperialistic at its core, okay? But I was wrong. Wow, woe is me. Woe is me. I'm a lamb to the slaughter. You guys, today we're going to talk about the new oil pipeline that the United States is funding through the last bill, through the $90 billion aid package that just got approved in Congress. Okay, that some of that money is going towards the port in Gaza that is being used as a new military-led base with United States soldiers posted there to make room for an oil pipeline that is going to be coming in from the Mediterranean Sea into Gaza. Now, how could I not have seen this coming? If you think that this wasn't planned, this invasion of Gaza, this bombardment of Gaza, and now and I'm not a liberal cuck. The word ethnic cleansing, this is the definition of it. This is not me putting some, I don't have a nose ring. I don't have blue hair. I am not, I'm getting flipped off by my producer doesn't have blue hair. He doesn't have a nose ring. Oh, he does. But you don't have you have a bar through your nose. You got a Rage Against the Machine nose ring. But this is the technical definition of what's going on. Clearing an entire population out of their land, driving them out of their land, cleansing. This is ethnic cleansing. What's going on in ethnic cleansing is a pure money play at its core. Now, of course, there's ideological reasons for it, right? Israel is a Jewish state. They say proudly, we are a Jewish state. Now, in the same breath, they call themselves a democracy. Now, a democracy, as we know it in the West, has a separation of church and state. We have Judeo-Christian roots. This is why you put your hand on the Bible when you go to testify or you become president. But at its core, we're still a secular nation. Israel is not. Now, it's a Jewish state for Jewish people. This is fundamentally what they believe. And by the way, a certain kind of Jewish people, Ashkenazis, right? Oshkosh Bagashis. They've been kicking Ethiopian Jews out for years. They've been expelling them from the country. Most of the darker skinned Jews, the Moroccan Jews, they occupy, the poverty classes in the country. But it's a Jewish state. So yes, they don't want any Muslims there. They don't want any Palestinians there. They don't want anybody but Jewish people in Israel. But at its core, I'm going to show you how I was wrong. I thought Bibi Netanyahu ran the United States foreign policy, and in certain ways he does, but in the long game, it is, in fact, the United States that is still holding the puppet strings over there, okay? So if you think that this was not planned for years, what's going on now, clearing these entire population out of Gaza to make room for this oil pipeline and this U.S. military base to guard the pipeline, You're smoking crack. You got another thing coming. You're hitting that fentanyl pipe just a little too hard. You need to master your high, young man. So look at who runs the United States government. Of course, it's not Joe Biden. It's Anthony Blinken, right? He is a self-proclaimed Zionist, proudly, outspokenly Jewish, is, backed up by the deepest roots of Zionism in this country. He is got long-standing ties with Benjamin Netanyahu, right? He is the one that is over there right now as we speak. He went to Ukraine first to tell Zelensky, hey, you got a bag coming. Just chill. You got a bunch of billions coming to you, and you've got a free passage out of here once Russia finally sacks your country. Doesn't matter. We all got paid anyways, right? Then he hopped on a jet, and now he's over in Israel telling Bibi, look, we got billions coming for you, baby. Don't you worry. Daddy's got you. Who's my good little girl? Shake that butt for me. Shake that butt and do that little walk, So what's happening as we speak, right? And this is not reported. It's just coming out it's just now coming out, right? This didn't come out 2 weeks ago when the funding bill was getting passed. $320 million. By the way, this is from the Associated Press. U.S. military ships are working to build a pier. They call it a pier. They don't want to call it a base, okay? By the way, there's 1,000 soldiers over there armed with guns. Matt Gaetz from California is the only politician to point this out, by the way. He goes, how is this a pier when we have thousands? Do thousands of armed soldiers just hang out on a pier? This sounds a lot like a base. U.S. military ships are working to build a base for Gaza aid. This is how they're spinning it. They're calling it aid to Gaza at a cost of $320 million. Now, why? Why? If you wanted to get aid into Gaza for the people being bombed, why wouldn't you just allow the aid trucks in the first place? Why would you need to build a port and a pipeline coming in from the Mediterranean Sea? Why couldn't you just truck those things directly over the border? This is strange. Now, we know, of course, it's because they all get bombed, right? So $320 million to build this new port/pier with an oil pipeline that's coming in. Now, listen to this. Listen to how they spin this. U.S. Navy and several Army vessels involved in an American-led effort to bring more aid into the besieged Gaza Strip are offshore of the enclave and building out a floating platform for the operation that the Pentagon has said will cost at least $320 million. Now, at the same time, in this bill, hidden within this foreign aid bill, right? This bill for military aid to Israel, you have a provision that gives millions of dollars for the United States to start accepting Palestinian refugees. Okay? So what they are doing is preparing Israel to expel every single person from Gaza. And where are they going to go? Some of them are going to go into the concentration camps that are built just across the border to the south in Egypt. Many of them will be killed, of course, in the invasion of Rafah, right? Which is going to happen any day now, maybe by this weekend. But the rest of them that are lucky enough to avoid those two options are going to come to America. And your tax dollars, our tax dollars, I can proudly say that because I finally paid taxes, are going to go to house and pay for these refugees. Millions of dollars are going to pay for Palestinian refugees that we created. Now check, this is the even wilder part, okay? Because you can't just come to this country without and claim asylum status without proving that you can come from a country where you have serious bodily threat from the regime in power. So the United States is going to have to allow Palestinians that are fleeing United States bombs to then come as refugees to the United States. It's so wild. This is like, it's out of it's out of an M. Night Shyamalan movie. It's so absurd that it's hard to really the gaslighting, the psychological warfare and mind control is so wild. You have to like take a step back. It's breathtaking. Now, the US, but if you look at the history of the US, we've been doing this since World War II. We've been destabilizing governments, causing wars, and then forcing these refugees to leave, and a lot of them have come to the United States. It's what happened with Vietnam. We dropped millions of tons of bombs. We killed 2 million Vietnamese people in 10 years of bombing and caused a lot of Vietnamese refugees to come to America. It's a crazy, like, abusive situation. It's like if I went to you at home and I beat up your dad and I killed your whole family, but then I said, come live with me. Come live with me. You're going to be able to own like a 3-bedroom stucco in Orange County. Okay? This is where all the Vietnamese live, right? You're going to be okay. So what? Your kids have, there's still birth defects from all the napalm and Agent Orange that we dropped on you. So this is what's happening. This is what I'm seeing is what's going to happen in Gaza. This is so now you have a situation where it may become a thing to where every single could 2.1 million Gazans be driven from Gaza, Palestinians driven from Gaza. I mean, look, they're all kind of huddled around the south. It could definitely happen. And now we know, of course, that Chevron, for years, Blinken and the CIA and oil barons like Chevron have been jockeying to steal that oil, to co-opt that oil in the Mediterranean Sea just next to Gaza. They've been frothing at the mouth for years. And these attacks of October 7th, incredibly convenient. So make no mistake, this has been in the works for a long time, and they were just waiting. They were lying in wait, hoping that there was an event that was going to allow them to finally go in and clean house. Literally clean house. And this is it. Now, of course, so it makes you believe, well, it makes you think, well, yeah, it's if Netanyahu didn't, at best, he was praying for an attack like October 7th. At worst, he had something to do with it, right? We know for a fact that Hamas units were doing drills next to the border. In fact, there was satellite photos of it, according to reports, in the weeks coming up to the attack. Crazy. I mean, and you think Israel didn't pick this up in their state-of-the-art U.S.-funded radar? Of course they did. Of course they knew it was going to come. So I just wanted to point out this is what's happening with the world and with the government and with just in case you thought it was something else, just in case you thought it might be something less evil than ethnic cleansing backed up by oil money. Hey, Bubbas, we're not quite there yet in the scale of evolution, okay? So, yeah, and now Benjamin Netanyahu, by the way, we all know, because Hamas offered a ceasefire. Again, you barely see that in the news. Barely. I think I saw one article come up about a week ago. Hamas has offered to sit down and talk about a ceasefire deal, right? In fact, I think they have negotiations going on this weekend in Egypt. Now, they've agreed, and part of that is agreeing to release a bunch of hostages. There's still a couple hundred Israeli hostages that are being held. Netanyahu has said that doesn't matter. They're still going into Rafah. Does not matter if they come to some kind of settlement. Damn it, we're going into Rafah, and your people got to go. You guys are gone. Hey, it's a bar. It's a dive bar, and it's 6 a.m., and the music starts playing, and you don't have to stay here. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. This is the message. You do not have to go home, but you can't. They're gone. You know what I mean? Interesting. This is this just in. The October 7th death toll has changed several times to lower numbers. The IDF has also admitted that some of the deaths were their fault, but the government has said they refuse to investigate exactly how many. Well, that is a known thing, too. If you're paying attention to this situation at all, you know that a bunch of Israelis living on the kibbutzes were mowed down by IDF soldiers. So they were shot by their own people, and there were people that coming out with white flags that were killed as well. So yeah, this is all, you know, when they say 1,200 people killed in the October 7th attacks, you know, that's been revised down, just like our economic numbers every month, right? So these have been revised down. And for a guy like Netanyahu, that's a small price to pay. 1,000 Israelis is just as a pittance compared to the Garden of Eden that they'll be living in once all the Palestinians have been driven from the land, and once it is an ethno state, right? This is the definition of an ethno state. This is, and if you recall, if you remember what Adolf Hitler, if you've heard of him, what he used to say, you know, was, I'm bringing back the glory of the German people, right? And an ethnically pure state, huh? It's much the same. It's much the same ideology that drives Zionism and, of course, Netanyahu, but it doesn't mean that the United States and its companies that control the government, Chevron, etc., the weapons contractors, the $320 million of your money that's going into their pockets to build this pier, it doesn't mean that they're not going to make money off of it, right? So you have your ideology, right? You have your ethno state, Bibi. You do, you know, you take care of everything. We're going to make money out of it, right? We're going to make money out of it, and we are going to have a permanent outpost in Israel. Now, certainly, what this will cause, if this actually goes through, is a resuming of hijacking in the Strait of Hormuz, right? We've got the Houthi rebels. We're now ratcheting up the bombing in Yemen. I don't call it Yemen, okay? Like, stop doing that. If you're white or you're not from there, just say it incorrectly, you know? It's like I don't say Kiev, it's Kiev. You're in America. You're an English speaker. Don't impress me. It's not Ibiza. It's Ibiza. Stop trying to be cultured. Stop trying to impress me. Stop it. I'm talking to you. You need to stop it. So, so this is where, and I completely lost my train of thought there, but this is where we're at. So it is quite sinister. So you see how if all of these people are driven into death, you know, essentially these concentration camps in Egypt, right, to the south, yes, a bunch of them will come into the United States, a bunch of soon-to-be radicalized Palestinians from Gaza coming into the United States. And now you have a United States base on the coast of Gaza, coupled with the fact that you now have bases that are getting attacked in Iraq and Syria and all of these soft targets. you position yourself to open up to attacks from Iran or attacks from ISIS 2.0 or attacks from Al Qaeda or whoever's operating, right? So not only do you make money, not only is there an immense amount of money to be made if you are in these industries, but it almost assures that there will be at least a decade of conflict, if not full-out world war, sparked off in the region. And again, it's good for defense stocks. It's good for, I mean, it's incredible. It's going to be an incredible time for oil and gas. And so this is what we have. And of course, more Palestinian death and suffering, and just more refugees to this country, right? More people. And somebody brought up a good point. If you go watch, this is Redacted, this unbelievable podcast, this husband and wife, where I get a lot of my information from. They brought up a good point. This refugee package is being lauded. It's being paraded around the U.S. Senate. Senators are saying, we are a nation of immigrants. We accept these Palestinian refugees with open arms so they can come live part of the American dream. No, I think they would rather stay in their land and not be bombed. That's, I mean, call me old-fashioned. I think most people that have to flee to a completely foreign country, which the United States is not, it's not like a Guatemalan refugee coming to America where half of his village is already living in Los Angeles. We are a world apart from Palestine, from the culture, the economy, the way of life, the religion. I think refugees would rather the CIA not overthrow their countries, and they would rather just stay where they're at. Like, I'm good. I'd rather live in Gaza. I'd rather live in Palestine and not live in an open air prison and, run my business and go to mosque 5 times a day. Like, I'd rather just chill. But yeah, I guess I can come live in a Connecticut suburb and, try to run a pizza place in between getting robbed at gunpoint by drug addicts. I guess we could give that a go too, though. So this is what's happening, whether you like it or not. So, and if you go back and read the history of the CIA, so woe is me. I feel like a fool. I'm like, Mitchell, you should know history better than this by now, right? I mean, if you look at what we did all over Central America, from the 50s through the 80s, Reagan, we've done this. Not quite to this scale, though. Not quite to the level of kind of open bombing. I mean, this slaughter that's so blatant that it's going to bring the West its long overdue reckoning. Now, this bombing went on in Vietnam, and I've talked about this on the last episode, but I'm going to talk about it again, why we are in Vietnam 2.0 in a second. The difference between now and 1969, when Nixon was waging his secret war in Laos, he dropped, I mean, most people don't even know that. He bombed that place so badly, the people are still getting their legs blown off in 2024 from stepping on landmines. But they haven't.
Over 30 deaths a year.
Over 30 deaths a year from bombs from like 55 years ago. It's crazy. In Laos. By the way, again, that's one of those things. The country's called Laos, but I will call it Laos. Okay? You need to stop pretending you have culture. Now, the difference between now and then is that there was no TikTok back in 1970. Everybody knows. This is why 30 new countries in the last month have signed on to work with the BRICS nations to de-dollarize. Okay? This is why there is an arrest warrant impending from the International Criminal Court for Netanyahu and his chief of staff. Okay? So there's no more hiding. There's no place left on earth that you can hide, right? But there's something more. Before I move on, I want to talk about the protests, okay? I want to talk about the protests on college campuses. Now, isn't it funny? Isn't this ironic that at the same time as this foreign aid bill is passed and this new money, this new $320 million earmarked to build this pier, okay, this port, this military base in Gaza, isn't it funny that at the same time, now all you hear about in American media are these protests, these violent protests on college campuses? Now, I want to point out, they arrested, I think it was a few hundred people at Columbia University last weekend, right? When they interviewed these kids, most of them weren't even students at the university. In fact, we know now that a lot of these people have been paid by pro-Palestinian organizations to go and protest. Now, we also know about the counter protests. We know that there's pro-Israeli people, just like at UCLA last week, and there was a big pro-Palestine, pro-Israel kind of clash of protests. We know that the pro-Israeli people are getting paid too. So this is really reminiscent of George Soros, who, by the way, is a unabashed Zionist, billionaire. We know pretty much for a fact that his money was behind what was happening during the George Floyd protests that turned into riots. Okay? So the same sinister forces, it looks to me, are the ones doing the agitating on college campuses. They're the ones taking these mostly peaceful protests, sit-ins, things that college kids have been doing since the civil rights movement. Civil disobedience, it's called. But these forces, these people that are paid to show up, even though they don't attend these universities, then these sit-ins and these peaceful protests turn into violent rioting and disruptions. And you've got, police everywhere. And that's all we're talking about the last 2 weeks, right? So it's very convenient that all of the attention has been diverted to the United States as this pipeline, as this $320 million pier, which is so laughable. George Orwell would be like, yo, props. I didn't even put this in my books. The kind of doublespeak that almost no senator pointed out, except, of course, for, the trifecta, Matt Gaetz, Bernie Sanders, and help me out here, Rand Paul. The only ones to point out that we have military boots on the ground with weapons. This is a base. This is another military base, making it safe for the oil pipelines and then the settler condos. We all know, you look at tweets from Zionists talking about how beautiful the coastline is in Gaza. And man, once those people are gone, and they're going, we're going to go. Real estate speculators are going to be in there. There's going to open up a whole flood of tourism, and the United States will be behind it all, profiting from the oil that they're stealing, they're annexing from the Mediterranean. So this is what's happening, guys. I hate to. It's like I know you love America, but. This is not, this is the house that you're living under right now. So this is kind of, this is where we're at. This is where we're at. You guys want to know what I'm going to do about it? About to get rich. That's what's happening. See, I don't like to do these lives and just talk about negativity, death, hyperinflation, currency crisis, the end of the empire. I like to talk about how to make money out of it, right? And you can too. See, here's the thing. None of these problems are going to go away, right? In fact, they're just going to get worse. You've got once the empire, and if you look at history, this is what Ray Dalio says. If you go follow Ray Dalio, he predicts these things in cycles, right? So we are back in the cycle of the 1930s leading up to World War II. This is leading us up to a war. You have to know this. It's a huge run on the banks. Step 2 is money printing. Step 3 is a gigantic event like a war that brings on a depression, okay? Now I'm going to get to step 5 and how you can make money out of it in a second. But that is absolutely what's going on. So you have the United States, just like leading up to the Vietnam War, our politicians assured us that there were no American boots on the ground. We're just sending special advisors to Vietnam. It is still a French war. It's still a South Vietnam contained conflict. And that's what they're selling you right now. There's no military, there's no boots on the ground in Israel. Well, okay. There's some boots on the ground, but it's a pier. And it's for their own good. Look, we're bringing aid into these people. Don't you want aid? Now, sure, these people that we're bringing aid to, we're actually going to there's going to be no one there to give aid to pretty soon because we're driving them out of the country. But this is for aid. This is not a hot war. And don't worry, in Ukraine, we have CIA, we have specialists, we have advisors on the ground. But don't be silly. There's no American troops there. As the months come along, you will see, you can't throw propaganda at people all at once. You can't give them the whole shaft. You got to start with the head and then move it in centimeter by centimeter, inch by inch, depending on how big you are. You know what I mean? You gotta ease into it. You gotta ease it. So propaganda it comes in stages. It comes in installments. So what you will see leading up to the election are two things. You're going to see a big market run, right? You're going to see just hold on to your Bitcoin, hold on to your commodities. I know it's down right now. The market's regathering, but running up to the election, you'll likely see them giving out goodies, right? It's the emperor throwing candy. It's the emperor of Rome on his way to a gladiator match, throwing candy out to the starving peasants, throwing loaves of bread out. Vote for me. I'm sure I've got your vote. This is what the American government is going to do. They're going to inject the economy with liquidity little by little. They're going to make an interest rate cut, and the markets are going to respond. It's going to go up. Now, at the same time, month by month, you will see more stories of U.S. soldiers in Ukraine. All right? You're going to see more and more U.S. soldiers getting into firefights, bombing campaigns in the Middle East. And this ends up, let your imagination run, right? In a Hollywood movie. Either we have a war on two fronts, or we have a Cold War on one front, little skirmishes, and we have hot war, with Russia in Ukraine. This is how it happens. So we're running up to 5 to 10 years of stagflation, high inflation, low or no growth. But these are the stages, right? So this is what we're in for. So how do you make money out of this? Do you want to hear what I'm going to do? Yeah, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Why not? It's my show after all. So I watch this fascinating, all I do is watch YouTube videos. I watch YouTube videos the way white guys from Pennsylvania that got laid off from coal mines watch Fox News. I watch doomsday YouTube videos, but I watch a lot of economic videos too. And so you learn stuff from that. Now, I know it's not like reading, okay? But if you listen to experts all day, every day, and you try to it helps you read between the lines a little bit and draw your own conclusions from everything that you've just heard and looked at. So this is where I'm getting this. I'm not just pulling this out of my butt. Like this is where I'm getting my prediction. What I think is going to happen is after the election, we are going to be in a recession. A recession leading into a depression. A depression meaning deflation. So everything is going to fall. Everything is going to fall. You're going to see, and probably that's going to be because of the war we get into, right? It's going to be, there's an event, because we could just print our way out of that if not, right? The economy's doing okay right now, but the consumer's cracking. So there's going to be a recession on or around election time. Next year, we will be in some kind of hot war or really some kind of conflict that drags us into a full-on depreciating cycle, deflationary cycle, meaning the price of stocks fall, the price of assets fall, the price of everything falls, the dollar falls, right? So you are, I'm talking about economic problems that become chaos, right? I'm talking about something mirroring the Great Depression, if you will. Now, I think that's going to last. I don't think that will last very long. No politician, listen to me, no politician, Donald Trump, Nancy Reagan, or Joe Biden will allow the government, Newt Gingrich, Abraham Lincoln, Bob Dole, Michael Dukakis, Robert McNamara, Barry Goldwater, George McGovern. Doesn't matter who wins it. I'm pulling for McGovern for president. No politician in this day and age will allow the economy to reset with that kind of depression. They will immediately start liquidating the economy. But the difference between now and 2008, when they did the same thing, when they bailed out the banks during the financial crisis, and they injected about, a couple $1 trillion into the economy, and then during COVID, $5 trillion into the economy, we are 30 times more in debt. So when your economy is running at, by next year, it'll be $40 trillion in debt, they're going to have to put tens of $1 trillion into the economy just to drag us out of that depression, just to keep the people from losing all their savings, just to cover the cost of the treasury bonds that are underwater in all of the American banks. And this goes for all over the world. The central banks all over the world are in this kind of situation. But once this happens in America, once they start liquidating the economy, the price of commodities is going to be something that you would see, you didn't think could be possible in a developed first world civilized place. Economists think we could see $500 a barrel oil. Talking about by 2030, $500 a barrel oil, $20,000 gold price per ounce. Bitcoin, forget about it. Millions. This is going to ruin people. It's going to ruin, and then you'll have, of course, a d-dollarization of the world. It's already happening right now. And in the world, the dollar is stronger than it's been in years. But it's so debased that you just saw it right there. 30 new countries are joining BRICS, and they want to stop trading with the US dollar. So imagine when we print 20 trillion new dollars, it's over. So you will see a situation where, if a gallon of oil, a barrel of oil is $500, you're going to have, look, I'm no expert, so I'm going to sound like a dummy. How much will a gallon of gas cost? Oil's $80 a barrel right now, and in California, a gallon of gas is about $6. So, Brian, if we could do some quick math, at $500 a barrel of oil,
what's it at right now?
Now it's at 80.
No, per gallon.
Gas is at about $6 in California. So you're at $500 a barrel of oil. Gas would cost about $37.50 a gallon. Okay? So you don't need to be a genius to see how this will fundamentally change the United States. And you don't have to be a genius to see how if you own these things, you are going to, this is a gift from God. This is actually the evidence of God. And I know I've been throwing a lot of Jesus stuff at you lately. This is evidence that at the end of it all, at the end of the blood, death, and the crickets and the locusts and the plague and the frogs, there comes a saving grace. And this is what we're going to be at. So if you don't think you need to be buying all that stuff right now, well, you need to be socking cash away, but it'd be a good idea to start buying silver and copper and gold and a little bit of crypto and a little bit of Bitcoin, or just saving your cash. The problem is every quarter the value of your cash goes down, but because there is going to be a pullback. Like there's going to be a big crash and all that stuff's going to go down with everything else, but it's on the way back up. So if you buy all that stuff and just hold it and you can rock through the waves and the lightning and the thunder, at the end of it, you've just won. Like I'm going to go when this happens, when the depression hits and interest rates go back down to almost nothing and the economy is printing money faster than the Philadelphia Mint can print, I'm going to be taking out loans. I'm going to be borrowing money just to buy commodities. And by the way, these are not fringe people that are saying that. I would encourage you to look at, even mainstream economists, while they don't say things like, oh yeah, I can see a $500 barrel of oil by 2030. Bitcoin is down 8% or something. There was a pullback and BlackRock is still like, yeah, we're talking to pension funds now about having you come in and buy some Bitcoin ETFs. So people see the long game. You've got to look through like the short-term double speak. This is where we're headed. And then as I said in the last episode, and we're going to do a video about this, places like El Salvador could become among the wealthiest places on the planet. Because there's a possibility when inflation's running that hot that you have the US government stepping in and banning Bitcoin, which is what Russia is trying to do. Which is ironic because they are moving towards a gold-backed digital currency, a stable coin, right, backed by gold. So you could see something like that in America where you got to use our stuff. However, if you own gold, you're a king. You're literally the new Incan king. What was that guy's name? They kidnapped him, they took all his gold, and then they killed him anyways. Nice people those Spaniards were. So, but a lot of people are going to lose. So it's all about your attitude. But my point with Bitcoin was that if it's banned in the United States and other Western countries, everybody's in El Salvador. You could see how it could be, El Salvador could look like Dubai if all these people that own this incredibly valuable finite asset like Bitcoin, but they can't legally use it in their countries. That's okay. I'm going to go buy up 50 acres using my Bitcoin on the coast of El Salvador. This could completely happen. It's what they're preparing for. It's what futuristic thinkers are preparing for. It's why they cleaned up, brutally and kind of like, fascists, but it's why they cleaned up MS-13. It's because they see the possibility. They see the possibility of, they knew at the same time that they made Bitcoin their reserve currency, their national currency, they were like, okay, we need to make this safe for wealthy people who own this Bitcoin to come to our country. And so we got to clean up the gang problem. This is what you have. But you will have blood and you will have death and you will have, people ruined. I mean, I worry about my parents. Look, I don't worry about the boomers. I mean, they're the ones that got us into this mess. They got to go. But, anybody that's just sitting on cash is going to have it wiped out. So you've got to get ahead of that. You have to be in assets. You need to be in commodities specifically, right? And also, look, if you buy the S&P during this rebound from this depression that I'm talking about, from this deflation, look, that'll help too, because then all the stocks, the NASDAQ, all of those companies will skyrocket from the new trillions of dollars that get injected into the economy. So that's good too, but ultimately you need to get out of dollars, because even if you're making a bag, even if you're making a bunch of money, it's US dollars. It's not worth hardly anything anymore. So the thought process is make US dollars, make fiat, and then buy hard assets. That's Bitcoin, that's gold. It's maybe property, right? Property's a good one. I know that Tampa Brad, I buy real estate, which is his handle, is probably watching this. Brad is very bullish on real estate.
How is crypto considered a hard commodity?
Crypto is considered a hard asset. Now, people will argue about that. And again, great question, Brian. Wish you had a microphone. But crypto is considered a hard asset because it's so finite. It's so finite that, well, it's not so finite. There's a cap on it. There's only 21 million Bitcoin. Almost 19 million have already been mined. And that's what the halving does. It makes it harder and harder every 4 years. It makes it harder and harder for the people to mine new coin. So it's not gold, where you can dig up more of, right? It's not stocks, which you can issue more of. It's not fiat currency, which you can print more of. All of that reduces the value of those things. There is no more Bitcoin. So, and you could argue, a lot of people say the earth will run out of gold if all these central banks keep buying it. Very, very true. That will make the price of gold just that much more valuable. And it will also necessitate Bitcoin becoming the digital gold. Now, what do we mean by the digital gold? I'm now starting to understand when people say digital gold, Bitcoin, while it may not become the thing that people use to make everyday transactions in their particular nation state, it will be what backs up the cryptocurrency of those nation states. Just like the US dollar used to be backed by gold, future cryptocurrencies of countries, those cryptos will be backed up by Bitcoin. That's how scarce it is. And like I mentioned on the last episode, it's going to come to a point where it's so valuable that people will not even be accepting fiat currency for their Bitcoin. So in 2034, if oil's $500 a barrel and you offered me $1 million American dollars for my Bitcoin, I don't want it. I don't want it because I bought at $60,000, at $40,000, at $67,000. These are the price points I got in at. It's already over $1 million. So that bull run, you guys, is so that's probably going to go on for a decade. That's where I see, and you could say, well, what's the solution? How does this decade of war and economic carnage and the dollar basically becoming extinct or obvious? Clearly, it's not going to be the world's reserve currency anymore. So what's going to happen? Hopefully AI steps in and starts to become massively productive and shores up all of the negative production. Well, two things will happen. Boomers will hopefully be dead, right? Because boomers are the ones that cost us money. The only thing more expensive than the US interest payments are Social Security and Medicare. And that's because people live too long, right? So you have all of these boomers retired who need government services, who depend on Social Security and Medicare, a lot of them just to survive. So that's a huge drain on the budget. They'll all be gone, or mostly on their way to being gone in a decade, 15 years. And then obviously people won't have kids. How could you have kids? How could you afford children when it costs you $37 for a gallon of gas. That's where the robots come. That's where AI has to come in and make up that labor shortage, right? And yes, immigrants too, I suppose. But, you know, why would an immigrant why are refugees from Venezuela going to want to come to America when we're printing money as fast as their government is? So the real pessimistic view is that America and the West turn into totalitarian, you know, socialistic states, like quasi-fascist, quasi-socialist states where there's not enough work for people. So universal basic income will probably be a thing, right? You have these people whose jobs have been taken by AI that don't know how to go and make money, that can't make money. It's just simply, nobody can compete with robots. You have to, or else you have people starving to death. They have to have government subsidies. So now the government can tell you what to do. If the government gives you money, they can tell you what to do. So on a mass scale, pessimistically, that's what America and the West and places like Russia, China's already there. Your money is a what is it called? The US, you guys in the chat, what is everybody scared of now? A central bank digital currency. So we will give you money, but we track where you spend it. We control where you spend it. And you better vote how we want to vote. And you better not speak your mind, or else we're not going to let you spend it. And the only people, if the country goes that way, the only people that will be free of that enslavement are people who are rich outside of the system, who have bought those commodities, who own Bitcoin, who own gold, who are so rich off the stock market, right? That they don't depend on the government. So that's pessimistically that's where it could go. Now, maybe it doesn't. I hope it doesn't go that way. But we know that AI is both going to be the savior and the curse for the world, you know, in the next 20 years. So yeah, so I see major outflows. I think I predict massive emigration, meaning people leaving the United States. And I think you're already seeing it, but you will see it more and more and more and more, of course, in the coming years. So that's why Mexico is poised to blow up. Central America is poised to blow up. Places in Europe, some places in Europe, Greece, Italy, they're giving land away right now. I mean, look, I don't like Italians or Greeks, but I would rather live on a farm in the middle of Italy that was given to me by the government for $1 and work that than live in a building in New York City off government central bank digital currency, $2,000 that they give me every month. No hope for employment. No, can't afford anything. The only way I live is through the currency that they give me. I'd rather live next to a guy named Enzo and own a bunch of goats. Yeah, wouldn't you? Thanks for listening, guys. Don't be a schmuck. We're not done yet. These are my predictions. This is what I think, because what's going on in Gaza and what's going on in Ukraine and what's going on in the United States government is not going to reverse course. Like you've heard of that theory about how when somebody becomes famous, they have what's called escape velocity. It means they broke through the zeitgeist and they're too big now. So it's very, very difficult for them to come back down to earth. Patrick Bet-David, is like that. He's a charlatan and, probably a fraud. He made hundreds of millions of dollars off a multi-level marketing scam. He's terrible. And my friends, lay people, not people in the entertainment industry, they go, hey, what's up with that Iranian guy that talks weird from that show Valuetainment that's got, millions of people watching every day? That he's so untalented. And I said, yeah, but he's got escape velocity. You know, he bought his way into the business, and he's killing it so hard that nothing can reverse his inertia. Well, the same is true when you go the other way. When things are going so bad, right? Especially in a country with a government and a culture and a currency that's committed so much sin, so much corruption, so much theft and imperialism and murder and lies for so long, mistakes become impossible to correct. The course becomes, they're headed too fast towards the bottom to where you can't pull the chute anymore, right? You're skydiving. You've got to pull your parachute before you pass a certain altitude, or else you're gonna be a pancake on the ground even if you do pull it. That's kind of what's happening now. Governments tend to move faster towards tyranny, and it's harder for them it gets harder and harder the more tyrannical they become to correct course. And this is what you have. And this is why you can't have big government, man. This is why, all those professors and those contrarians that I disagreed with in college that said power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Big government tends to get bigger and bigger and bigger. It becomes like metastasizes and becomes so big that you can't operate on it. And that's what's happening. So you have people treating the government like a going away sale. And I think people in Congress, yes, some politicians are just extremely stupid and binary and ideologically driven, but most are just there to make money. They know it's the end. It's the same reason that stars, A-listers in Hollywood that used to take $20 million fees for summer blockbusters are now doing voiceovers for apartments.com commercials. They know it's over. They know the end is coming. Let me take the check and jump in my plane before the sun sets. Right? So that's what's happening. And so, yeah, it's just what it is. And you can be sad about it. You can be angry about it. I get it. It makes me sad, makes me angry, makes me not want to pay taxes. But you got to do it because you got to stay out of prison so you can be out to buy all of those commodities for this great bull run. So if you know how to play this, guys, you can take advantage of it because there's going to be winners. When there's this much cash going into the economy, you can get some of it. Like, stop complaining about it. I will never stop complaining about it. This is my job. But it's my job to tell you. It's my job to complain and then come up with a solution. So life is a game. It's meant to, it's a roll of the dice. The great American poet, Nasir Jones, one of his first singles, his unreleased tracks from back in the day was Life is like a dice game. It's a dice game. You might crap out, but you might get rich, but it's guaranteed you gon' die. And you might get missed for 3 or 4 hours till they light they spliffs. Jadakiss, another great American poet. Brian, do we have any questions? Do we have anything in the chat that anybody would like to talk about or anything you would like to add to this? Because I know this is something that you were saying for a long time. Well, you've been mentioning to me because I know we've been talking about how Netanyahu, basically our thesis has been that the Israel lobby and Zionism control American foreign policy, but we're seeing that it's a lot more mutual than that, right? That American imperialism is actually the one ultimately
That's what I've been saying.
Leading it. Yes, no, and props to you. Now, do you have anything you want to add?
I mean,
If you don't, that's okay.
no, it's the same as Ukraine. It's the same as Hong Kong. They want military bases as close to
Right. Taiwan. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, they're just setting up
Right.
proxy military bases.
So this is as imperialistic as anything else, or right. The way we commit imperialism, which is through proxy.
I think that we'll see what Reagan did in Hong Kong, I'll look it up. But it was basically like a CIA affiliate set up in Hong Kong to be next to China.
Right,
but it's
right.
called something else. We're going to see the same thing in Israel.
Yeah. So, and he brings up a good point. And we actually have a CIA agent. We have multiple CIA agents that are coming on the Connect podcast. And they'll probably be able to shed light on a lot of this. But most of this stuff is driven, most of these war games, which I'm calling these are war games. This is the subterfuge and the obfuscation and the secrecy that leads up to hot war. It's war games. It's Cold War. This is driven by the CIA. They set up front companies in places like Taiwan, and they have operatives in the United States media apparatus, right? They have operatives in Ukraine, in Taiwan, in Israel, and they are facilitating the subterfuge and, making it. They're the ones that are facilitating the logistics to make all of this stuff happen. Well, at the same time, ethnic cleansing in Gaza, oil pipelines going in, like at the perfect time, right? Just unbelievable timing. And now in Taiwan and Ukraine, right? It's a symbiosis. It's a symbiotic relationship between the American Congress, the American government, shadow organizations, aka the CIA, the client states, whether that's Ukraine, whether that's Israel, whether that's Taiwan, and of course the weapons industry and the other lobbyists, right? Oil, Chevron, right? The ones who benefit ultimately and make money out of all of this and then give it to the politicians so they can look for the next target. It's pretty fascinating. It's pretty, and I'm going to recommend some books too that you can read about it, just so you know that I'm not crazy. You got anything over there, Red?
I'm looking up what the organization was called that he set up in Hong Kong.
Anyways, we're going to get out of here, but do we have any super chats or anything to read?
No super chats.
Anybody asking anything? I'd like to interact with you guys. I miss you.
Oh, DD says this guy is a moron.
Oh, really? Nice. Hey, Dee, you might be right, but you're watching the show, punk. You know what I mean? What do you think's happening, Dee? Why don't you go start a podcast and give your own opinion on it?
Hunter asked, what could Mexico turn into in terms of cartels and narco-politics as all of this starts to happen?
That's a great question, Hunter. So Hunter asked, what will become of cartels, basically, if Mexico becomes like this haven for Americans and wealth that's moving out of the United States. I mean, the days of super cartels, I think you're already seeing are done. They arrested, actually they just let go, Mencho's brother, they just let go of. But if you'll start to notice, the heat's coming down more and more and more on Mexican kingpins. When we were down in Culiacan, Sinaloa last November, a year and a half ago, I remember our driver, our courier said, "Nadie quiere ser Chapo." Nobody wants to be Chapo anymore. So the days of the barons, the drug lords are finished. So if Mexico becomes the next El Salvador, you're going to see cartels become like what's happening to gangs in El Salvador. They're either going to stop being violent or they're going to die, because there's going to be so much legal money coming into that country that they're not going to put up with that anymore. They're not going to put up with beheadings and broad daylight shootouts. Not going to happen. So I think now they're a lot more sophisticated. Cartels will exist in Mexico for a very long time because they're so rich and they're so entrenched in legitimate enterprises and the government that you'll see them almost become, you'll see them go white collar more than they already have, right? Gangs in El Salvador were dirt poor. They lived off like extorting, pupusa carts. They're not making tens of billions of dollars a year, if not more, like Mexican criminal organizations. But yeah, it's going to get cleaned up. If Mexico is looking like it's going to become the next California, yeah, the days of that crazy violence is done. Because Mexico can do it. They have all of the apparatus. They have all the military capabilities to eliminate the crime that they have now on like a wholesale scale. They just don't do it because everybody's getting paid off. But yeah, once it becomes the new United States, once the West and people from Asia and Western Europe and America and billionaires start fleeing there out of fear of like getting hit by a nuclear attack by Russia because of our government and, the CIA and what we're doing in Ukraine. Yeah, no, it's cartels to me right now are like, it's funny. I was thinking about this. It's like, I would call them like bank robbers, like, those great American robbers like Jesse James in like 1870s America. They're the last generation of outlaws before they go extinct, before their way of life essentially goes extinct. And probably by then, when crypto runs the world, you're just gonna be able to order drugs through the mail, right? Like it's not even gonna be, drug distribution will change, indelibly after that as well. So that's a good question. I was just thinking about that the other day.
Do you think with rising prices in commodity and the amount of minerals and resources they're finding in Mexico, start to get into that market?
Yeah, are you talking about cartels or legitimate people? Yeah, well, so Brian brought up a good point. So they're finding all of these minerals and, like lithium and bauxite and all these things in Mexico and in southern Mexico. And the question was, are cartels going to get involved in it? I think they already are. They're absolutely. And in fact, we are through, and we know this through Luis Chaparro, who's documented this, in places like Chiapas, cartels will work with the mining companies to clear out a bunch of the residents of a certain area to basically, they commit a huge level of atrocities. Everybody just abandons their land, and then the mining companies come and they swoop up all the land and they put the mine there. So yeah, no, that's absolutely already happening. Look, they're stealing oil and things like this, but I think you'll see, you'll cease to see like theft of oil, and it's like, no, the cartel now is their own oil company. That's what I think. So, look, if it affects white people, it's got to go. So what you can't have white people moving to El Salvador and not feeling safe. So you have to make conditions safe for rich people, for investors. And so, you're going to see cartels will still exist, but they're not going to operate in blatant or super violent ways anymore, So, heck yeah, dude. We good? So thank you guys. Make sure to tune into the Connect every Sunday. The Connect with Johnny Mitchell. Go subscribe to it. I want to start doing. We don't know where we're gonna go with this Johnny Mitchell show thing. I don't know if I want to keep doing lives. I want to keep doing lives, but I also I don't know. I want to incorporate a bunch of stuff. So just always watch. Set your alerts. Put your alerts on. Everything I do and say is interesting. Everything I do and say should be liked and commented on, even by DD. You know what I mean? He's a subscriber. He's a fan. Like, he doesn't, this guy's like, this guy loves me, dude. This guy's, I mean, he got his reaction. We're calling him out, So it's like, I'm DD's God. I'm his daddy. I'm his everything. And I'm going to be your everything, You just need to hit the track and bring me back my money, Drop it out of your sock and put it in, what's the saying? Drop it out of your cock, put it in a pimp's sock, right? So yeah, but just put on alerts, please, because we really want to grow the show, and we want to grow how it looks too. But anyways, I'm out of here. Deuces.